So this here is the rocket that I would be using, or we're going to be using for the trip here. Now, when we're launching for this kind of a mission, um, it is best to kind of line up you have to make sure you line up the planets right. So the Kerbin, which is the Earth equivalent, is going to be going to Joule, which is the Jupiter equivalent, and it's best to have a like 95-degree angle approximately. So if like that, right about here. So then in this next clip here, I'm going to go ahead and speed it up so we can get to that point. Alright, so now we're here, but the way this launch is going to work, we're going to try to launch the rocket like with Kerbin, which is the Earth equivalent right here we're on. So we want the station to be facing like forwards with Kerbin's orbit, so I'm going to fast forward, kind of speed up time until that's the case. We want it along this kind of a line right here, so it's going with Kerbin's orbit in the direction of Joule, like that. We want this right here facing upwards, I guess, relative to how we've been orienting it. So we're going to use this SAS as a stabilization kind of component that's necessary in the rocket for steering it. These are all the stages over here on the left, and then we're going to put the throttle at maximum, and then we're going to go ahead and make sure we have our resources all looked at here. This kind of lists what we have, like in terms of solid fuel, liquid fuel, all that. So we're going to go ahead and launch here. Now there's a lot of stages, and so there's a lot of solid boosters here on the side, and it's gonna take those in stages. So it fires 6 at a time, and then it ejects them, and then it does the next 6. So I'm gonna go ahead and speed up through this process here. I mean, so the important part is that because it has such a heavy payload, we have to go so far. We have to build a lot of speed to kind of to make like one single Hoffman transfer to Joule or Jupiter. So we have to build a lot of speed, which means we have to have a lot of solid boosters and such. So that's one stage there. I mean, that ideally wouldn't break violently like that, but I turned on a few like settings in here so that it wouldn't catastrophically like blow itself up every time I do that. But yeah, so it's gonna do this a few times, and then we're gonna break off the mainsail engines on the bottom after that. We're trying to build this apoapsis right here. We're trying to get it to like that. I mean, it's basically a one-step Hoffman transfer. Instead of trying to circularize, we're just gonna go straight up. So eject the mainsails here in a second. There we go. We got some more solid boosters on the smaller section, which has 2 stages. So now that we've escaped the Kerbin right here, that blue dot you see there is going to be the Kerbin escape, and then now we have a solar orbit. So we're going to go ahead and drop these solid boosters here. Now the way that most maneuvers are done in the game, at least, so that this is our solar orbit here. But so the way that the maneuvers are done is you place a node on your current trajectory, and then you can like toy with it to like prograde, retrograde, all that to determine where you're like. It'll give you a predicted trajectory based on that. And so I place one here, and then I have a little bit of trouble trying to find an encounter with Joule. So I'm going to go ahead and speed up through this, but I try a few times and eventually I get it. So that right there is the encounter we're looking at. It gives you when you first encounter it, and if you're going too quickly, it'll tell you also when you escape it. So I try to find like a really good window. I toy with it a little bit more to find a window that's like long enough for me to mess with it, to like make sure I've been captured in Joule's orbit. in that second ring it produces is the predicted trajectory after you enter its influence, escape its influence, and then are launched back again. That's what the second, that giant ring right there was what the orbit would be after that. But since we're going to be burning retrograde by the time we get into Joule's orbit, that won't occur. We're gonna mess with it past this point. So down here on the bottom right of that navigation ball there's those two lines of green text which list when the node is going to show up and how long you need to burn for. Whenever you do a node, you have to burn approximately half the amount of burn time prior to the node position. So like, I think in this clip I have like a minute and a half burn. So I'll be making sure that I burn early on that, so I'm reaching the right speed when I reach the node. So we go ahead and burn, and then here I'm going to go ahead and fast forward the trajectory meeting up with the projected trajectory. I had a few issues again. I had to remake the nodes. Right here you can see my actual trajectory reaching the predicted one. Grows and grows and grows, and then here right about now you see like an encounter right there. And so then from this point on, I'm just going to go ahead and time warp it until we're close enough for me to start, like, for us to reach the actual influence of Joule. And here we are. Now we're in the influence of Jupiter, or Joule. This is what its orbit. These are the orbits of the moons of Joule. So then, every time you set a node, you want to make sure that your rocket ship is oriented towards the maneuver node, and it puts a little marker on your navigation ball down there. So I go ahead and line it up, make sure I'm getting kind of like a sharper trajectory there. And then I set another node at its periapsis, where I also burn retrograde again, so it's more circular. And then when I reach that, get a nice circular orbit there. It'll also tell you the descending and ascending node, which are those two, or like the green arrows on the sides. Once I reach the descending node, I do another maneuver where I try to make it in line with Jupiter's moons. So here we are doing that. As you can see, it kind of lines up there. There we go, and it's more circular and in the right plane. Then I also burn retrograde again, right there. I try to make an encounter with Laythe, which is the equivalent to Titan. So that's the target, the planet Laythe. There we go, just like the predicted path. I'm gonna time warp again. Now this is where I realized I made a significant error approaching Laythe from like head on. Like that was, so first off, I'm going way too fast. I'm going like somewhere around 4,000 meters per second, I think. So then that's definitely too fast. I start realizing that I've done that and trying to find a good way to maneuver around it. And instead of just letting myself orbit around and then like approaching it from another angle, maybe I just start burning retrograde. I start panic burning retrograde. And here I am trying to save myself. But what ends up happening is that I get very close, very, very close, and I try to pull the periapsis close, very close to the surface of Laythe so that gravity can maybe slow me down, which is not a good idea because it would just pull me into the planet, which I kind of knew. But then again, here's where I kind of figure out that if I don't get captured by Laythe, the orbit, the results from that is going to throw me directly into the core of Jupiter. Yeah, see right there, that orbit would send me directly into the core of Jupiter. captured by this planet right now. So I started panic burning, retrograde, trying to slow myself down. And because of the modifiers I have like enabled in the game, because I didn't trust, I'm not good enough in the game to do this on like limited fuel and like quite realistic physics. Because of that, I'm able to actually survive this capture. But you know, ideally you wouldn't want to approach a planet like this. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm demonstrating just a general concept of gravity capture and all that. So here we are. Me panic burning, retrograde. These are the modifiers I've applied. So I shouldn't be able to overheat. I shouldn't be able to like the ship shouldn't be able to break apart from stress, all that. And then here I am, like crashing into the Earth way too far. Laythe or Titan, much too quickly. And because I survived this atmosphere due to those modifiers, I'm actually able to burn retrograde as I'm burning into the atmosphere, which does actually bring me down very quickly, like the speed. So I think when I was originally entering, it was around 4,000 meters per second, and I managed to bring it down to very low. At this point, I start just deploying everything. I run the rest of the stages, and luckily the parachutes are give me mercy. They actually catch the pod here. The rest of my ship crashes into the ocean, and because I was approaching it so quickly, I wasn't able to plan like a place for me to land. So I kind of just fall into the ocean here. And the rover that I added to this is, of course, not the kind that we would be using in our flagship mission. I just need something to demonstrate. And then here we have the conclusion of catastrophic failure. List of all the destroyed parts I have. But I hope that was a good example of maybe how you would approach this. I was aiming to demonstrate the moment transfer as well as gravity assist, gravity capture.